I feel really privileged to address the legislature with this motion, and also privileged to have my wife, Karen Lips, in the audience. When our legislature amended our climate goals this spring to reach 1.2 megaton level of CO2 emissions in 2030, and that our province be carbon neutral in 2050, many might be thinking these goals having no immediate impact as there are so many elections away. However, being an architect specializing in sustainable buildings, I knew that it made no sense at all to wait. Everything we do as humans contributes CO2 to the atmosphere, but few contribute for as long as the buildings we build. The gas guzzler of a car inevitably succumb to rust and other failures after a few years, and we can then replace it with a really efficient one or even an electric car. Not so for buildings. A large portion of our building stock is over 100 years old, and the buildings we build now can be expected to last at least 100 years or more. Yet, as we discuss meeting climate crisis goals only 31 years away, most of our new buildings are woefully inadequate for the future, using 50-year-old technology and goals. For instance, the new National Energy Code that we haven't even adopted yet only require double glazing in windows. This has been the standard in Canada for the past 50 years. Why not specify triple glazing, which has been readily available for the past 25 years? Triple glazing is available as a standard option for most window manufacturers and cut the window losses to less than half and makes sitting next to the windows far more comfortable. It will be a huge and complex job to convert all our existing buildings to be carbon neutral by 2050. But clearly, any new building should meet that standard now. Otherwise, we also have to renovate the thousands of new buildings built between now and 2050. Whereas buildings can be upgraded to carbon neutral standards at a modest cost before they're built, the cost rises to 2 to 5 times as much after it's constructed. Think of a typical wall, for instance. Adding a thicker layer of foam before it's finished is easy. Just get thicker foam boards and longer screws. Later, to improve the wall, you have to tear off the siding first, then add the foam, and then rebuild the siding again. So waiting to improve new buildings clearly makes no sense at all to me. This is why I tabled this net zero now for all publicly funded new buildings this spring. Net zero buildings are what we need. They're really well built and insulated, and the remaining power needs are supplied by a solar collector system on the roof. In other words, all the energy needed is supplied by the collectors. The electrical grid serves to take away any excess power produced on sunny days, and the grid will in turn provide power when the sun is not shining. On a yearly basis, energy consumed equals energy produced, therefore the name net zero buildings. The good news is that the extra cost of net zero buildings are paid off by the annual savings. The extra cost could even be financed outside the budget, as is the case with windmill parks, where the millions in upfront cost is paid for by the yearly sales of electricity. PEI has actually been in the forefront of developing net zero buildings. I came here in 1974 to design and build the Ark, which was run by windmills and passive and active solar. Also self-sufficient in growing food, it was unique at the time. In 1995, I got to repeat the concept with the PEI Advanced House on Brackley Point Road using off-the-shelf technology. When built, the 10-kilowatt windmill on site provided all the power needed for the occupants' cooking, heating, lighting. And this house is still standing. Again in 2005, when still an architect, our office finished the Jean Canfield building, one of the first truly sustainable federal office buildings heated with district heat and powered by solar collectors mounted on the roof and used as sunshades. So no problem designing and building net zero buildings here on PEI. We have a 40-year-long tradition. It's only natural that the province should lead the way now. Large projects like schools are already complex, requiring large teams of architects and engineers, so adding the net zero requirement will in no way limit the supply of talented designers. For transportation, infrastructure and energy, it's simply a matter of telling their consultants that that's what they want. We want net zero buildings, and the consultants will do it. Nor will the contractors be required to do unusual work. They will be installing windows like before, just higher quality with triple glazing. They will be installing insulation just in thicker layers with longer screws. They will have to be more careful installing and testing the air sealing. The area of roof collectors will be bigger than on a house. In other words, no rocket science involved. Interior power use will also be designed to be extra efficient with LED lights and high-efficiency motors and air handling systems. The extra well-insulated exterior skin actually reduces the cost of mechanical equipment. Far less and much smaller heaters and boilers are needed to keep this building warm. In fact, the islanders will appreciate that net zero buildings are so well insulated that they barely cool down when the power is off. If provided with emergency power, that system can be far smaller, so net zero buildings are natural emergency and warming centers for rural and urban areas when the lines are down. I've been really pleased with the response from the Department of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy. They invited me to discuss the concept just days after I tabled the motion in the spring. I succeeded in getting our national proponent of green buildings, the Canadian Green Building Council, to arrange workshops on net zero buildings, also sponsored by the Architects Association of PEI. The workshop was held last week and was so successful it had to be repeated, and many of the attendees were indeed from Public Works Department. Our instructor indicated that institutional and commercial sized net zero buildings only cost 2 to 6% more, and that a large building like a school built to high net zero standards would only drop 6 degrees Celsius over a 2-week period without power. There is every reason to adopt net zero now for public buildings. The next step, of course, is to bring developers and house owners along. We are lucky that we have a low bank interest rate. This will guarantee that the required investment in net zero will be a far better investment than money in the bank. When we change both new and existing buildings to be carbon neutral by 2050, the required construction activity from now till then will add several $100 million a year in new economic activity while eliminating, eventually, the import of oil. What better way to save the environment? Thank you.